Hey guys, and welcome to part 2 of my Ateez Jumanji box making. So clearly I am working on the board again. This is going to take me, I feel like, a lifetime because there's so many leaves and pieces like that. So basically I'm just working on the outlining portion. I did do a quick test because I'm going to be cutting this on my glow forge, so I had to make sure my lines were all correct so I could do cutting and engraving separately. So that's why there's now two colors. So pieces that are red are going to be engraved and pieces that are black are going to be cut out. So I am probably going to end up doing, once I get the board done, a nice testing piece. It's just making it smaller, doing quick test runs so I can see how it turns out, make sure everything kind of cuts nicely, and then I'm also probably going to use it as my sample piece so I can test paint colors to make sure I get a nice dark green, a nice maybe lighter medium green, and then trying to figure out what color I'll do the background. It looks orange in this picture, but I've seen it in other images where it looks more yellow, so I might try and do like maybe a yellow orange, or I'm not sure yet. I might just see what paints and stuff I have and pick from there. And then of course I'll be using like a black that I'll water down, or not necessarily water down, add some white to kind of just make it more of a gray for the lines that I engrave. And then I might try to do kind of like a wash technique to kind of just make the board look dirty. Those are just my ideas. I really don't have much thought when I'm doing this part. I haven't used Illustrator, which is the program I'm using. I'm using Adobe Illustrator to make this, but I haven't used it in so long. But the tools and everything across the Adobe programs are pretty much universal across them all. So the pen tool in Photoshop will be the same as the pen tool in Illustrator. So I know Photoshop really, really well, but a lot of the online sites say that Illustrator is really good to use over Photoshop for the Glowforge, which is why I'm doing everything in Illustrator. But yeah, I'm just gonna let this play on so you can kind of watch me work on the leaves for a little bit. I won't get them all done because sometimes when I'm working on things, if it's very tedious like this where I'm doing the same thing kind of over and over and over, I just need a break and to move on to something else. And then sometimes I just get inspired to work on something else and I'm like, oh, I'll just come back to this when I'm, just ready to work on it some more. But yeah, I hope you enjoy watching this part, and you'll probably hear me again later in the video. Alright, so the next part we end up working on is the side panels, which is basically the message that Ateez ends up getting in the game board at the very beginning in the first episode. So right now I'm working on remaking the little circle dash line design that they have. It took me a little while to figure out what I wanted. The actual size of this paper or size document is so large that when I zoom in, the pixels and the text gets so blurry. So later on I end up just opening the picture because it was just much easier for me to read just off my screen, and I end up just writing down the actual text that is needed. But basically I'm using like the ellipse tool to make the circle, and then I'm using the pen tool to try to make the actual side line pieces, but for some reason it wasn't filling in and working how I wanted. I was like half tempted to go into Illustrator and just remake it there, which I probably will end up having to convert all of this all over into Illustrator, because I'm thinking I might just make a stencil of the actual text and design and then just paint the text on, or I was thinking I might just coffee stain some paper and just kind of so it looks dirtier, not so crisp white, and then printing on top of that paper. I haven't decided yet on what I'm going to do. Because I started looking for like just some cream papers and other things like that, because their paper clearly is not white. It's kind of more of like a tannish cream. But I don't know if I'm just going to find paper that looks like that and match it, or if I want to actually stain it myself, like I said, with some tea or coffee to give it a more vintaged look. And then just printing on it. That might be more what I do instead of painting, because I'm not sure how well the paint would like show up if I just paint it on the actual panel that I stained. But yep, I'm trying to straighten it so the lines are straight, because the thing I traced was on an angle. Oh, the struggles. But yeah, I tried to match it, the red text is red. So I used the eyedropper tool to try and match their red. Theirs seems a little bit brighter than mine. But of course it's my take on it. I do whatever I want. And then there's a cool feature in Photoshop that you can match fonts. So you use that, highlight the section you want, the font you want it to get close to, and it won't be 100% exact same fonts, but it gives you a bunch of options of fonts. And then I just picked one that I think looked cool, kind of a little bit older, and that I felt kind of matched. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. I have no idea what fonts they used, but it's just what I did to kind of match it. And then I'm kind of moving my layers around on the right. I didn't want to bog the whole screen down with all my layers and all the tool pictures, but yeah, so here I go. Trying to find it and then writing down what the actual text is, because it's way easier to read it here like this on my screen, again, like I said, than it was to actually view it in Photoshop, because it got so pixelated when I got close. And then let's see what colors there. See, that's like more like a dirty tan than like an orange or a yellow. I don't know, but theirs seems so glossy and nice. I don't know how mine will turn out in comparison, but they have little pockets at the end. I'm not sure if I'm going to do the pockets myself. I think I might just leave it just one long sheet of paper and not do the pockets. But I still haven't 100% decided on that or not. I mean, I cut out pieces for it already, but yeah, I guess I'll let you watch me type my text out, get the side panels done and together, and then we'll move on to the next part. Alright, so now with the side panels done, I decided to start on the cover. This one was, oh, just thinking back on it, was a little bit of a nightmare, yet not too bad. So I'm basically doing some calculations because I can't do math in my head that well. Basically, I'm trying to figure out where the middle line should be on this. So, of course, I think I can't remember. It was like 10 by something for the square. So I did like a rough guess. I ended up trying to Photoshop pictures of the actual cover to give me a good kind of exact straight on look. So I ended up having to perspective warp. Here I noticed that the shape of this cover was the same as the board, but I end up scrapping that and just tracing it from the board, just using the pen tool. If you hold down shift, it'll make an exact straight line, which is how I could tell this is not perfectly straight, a little off, because when I held the shift key, little spot it went to was a little off. Not exactly straight-ish, I guess. You'll see it more when I do the actual board one. So I tried to resize this to fit and everything, and it just felt off. So I ended up deciding to just trace the one on the actual picture and kind of, make it fit to how I thought was right. Which, who knows? You just gotta go with it. And then, let's see, do I do it now? Oh, nope, so I decided to work on the map first. Oh yeah, so I end up tracing the map first, because that's going to be cut out, because that's the hard part about doing it too, is you have to kind of imagine how you're going to do it. So like I'm imagining this darker centerpiece is going to be like the base part of like the actual cover, and then whatever I'm tracing out is going to be cut out from a separate piece of wood. So it'll actually sit up higher and look thicker and be, sitting up higher, I guess, in a sense. So instead of being flush with the wood. The part I ended up struggling quite a bit with ends up being the stitching lines, actually. Because when I try to do it, mine go very pointy instead of kind of having that roundness to them. Ugh. So sometimes things like that happen where it's like you work on it, you just need to take a break from it, work on something else, and then sometimes that things will just come to you on how to solve the problems that you're coming against. But I know I'm going to have issues with the four corner pieces. I can just tell. Struggle is real sometimes. But this is probably the most time-consuming part of making this so far, is making all of the actual, I would kind of think of these almost as like accessory pieces. So right now I copied and pasted the actual border part because you can kind of tell how it's almost a little separate. I don't know how I'm going to do this part. Sometimes I just do things and I just don't know what I'm going to do. So now I'm moving the map to line up with the first part instead of the second, which I initially built it from. So, I don't know what goes through my brain sometimes when I do parts of these things or think of things, but. And then you can use, there's a smoothing tool, so when pixels are, the pen tool like that is, and you have it all highlighted, you can use it to kind of draw, move the pen tool marks or make extra ones, which is really nice. Now I'm making the 4 lines that are going to be engraved on the side there, making sure they're all the same length and everything like that. And then you just copy, paste them over onto the side and the other side. That was probably the easiest part of this whole thing. those 4 lines. And then you'll get to watch me struggle through the actual stitch lines. I tried a lot of different things, and then I was just getting so frustrated, I kind of gave up. I'm gonna do the circles first, so I can get that whole outer shape done, because the outer shape will be done, and then I'm actually going to be sticking on top to make it even a little thicker, the actual design. So enjoy! Alright, so this is the last part of part 2 of the Jumanji Ateez box making. So the only part I haven't recorded was the actual cutting of the wood to these pieces. These are all the pieces to actually assemble the box with. It was my first time working with a table saw. My dad came over to basically give me safety tips, advice, and things like that, and was kind of there with me when I did it. Basically for the fact that since I've never used like machinery like that, he was afraid I was going to take a finger off or something. So thanks, Dad, for helping me with that part. But I watched a few videos on how to stain wood. This is a dark walnut color. They say to stain with the grain. And this just needs a 2 to 3 minute dry time. And then it says to wipe over it. Mine didn't really seem to need to be wiped over again. I'm not sure if it's because I kind of was using a lot of stain. It felt like I was using too much stain, but not to the point where a bunch of it was bubbling and sitting on top of the wood, which is kind of why they say after the 2 to 3 minutes to kind of then go over it and brush any excess off, which I didn't seem to have an issue with. So I just kind of go through, stain the top of all of it with the nice dark walnut. This is a 1-part stain, so this does not have polyurethane in it. I probably could find a stain that had the polyurethane, but I was thinking I might sand it down, maybe give it more of a worn look. But I ended up actually really liking how this looked. I thought it looked older. It looked more piratey is kind of the term I think of when I'm doing this, when I'm picking pieces. And like, does this seem like a pirate? Does this, look kind of older and maybe worn? And I thought it kind of did with the way the wood looked and everything. So I ended up actually see there I am just kind of wiping it, some of the droplets that came off. So what I used is that rag is actually a really old t-shirt that had holes in it, stains, whatever. So I ended up cutting it off, cutting a small piece off the bottom, and turning it into a smaller rag. They do sell and make like staining microcloths and things like that, but I was like, why pay for it when I just have an old junk shirt that I could just cut down and use instead? So that's what I did. And then of course, staining with the grain. I'm wearing gloves, making a mess as I go, of course. I have all of the wood is on an actual another piece of wood, so I'm not actually accidentally staining my desk or my craft table, which I actually ended up doing anyway, because I just make a mess when I craft. I can't help it, I guess. But here, of course, those are such small pieces, I decided to just hit them all at the same time, because then it kind of made it a larger piece, so when I ran across, it was a lot easier, and I felt like I could get a lot more done in one go than trying to do one at a time of these smaller mini pieces. So again, I sized this whole thing to match a replica of an actual Jumanji game. So this is quite large. It ends up being closed, ends up being 16 by 11 by 4 is the goal size for when this is all complete. But I guess we'll see about that when we get there. After this is all stained, it does say to give it about an hour to fully dry. The 2 to 3 minutes is to let the stain seep and soak into the wood. And then if anything is left on top or is bubbled on top, that's when you're supposed to wipe it away after those 2 to 3 minutes. I am also wearing a vapor mask to kind of protect my lungs. I wasn't sure if there was like going to be a bad odor coming off the stain or anything like that. I just have one that I used when I was cutting it down to protect from all the sawdust from getting in my lungs, as well as I use it for when I work with resin. So it's just one I have, and then the cartridges are just broadly based to work for all that kind of stuff, so I don't have to keep changing them or anything. And of course you can see the lovely mess that is all over my desk as well, but it was surprisingly a lot easier than I expected for staining. I've seen some people use like the sponge brushes, and you can do a nice coat of the sponge brush over, and then you will need to wipe it with the cloth to, like I said, get any bubbled residue or anything that is on top of it off. But that cloth ends up being like that nasty brown. But I kept it because I'm like, if I need to stain more or do any touch-ups, I definitely can. I am thinking I might end up actually doing the pockets at the bottom. So I would just need to end up staining 2 more pieces, which I do have cut. They're just sitting off camera. And so I would just need to stain those, which wouldn't be too bad. If you do get one that has polyurethane in it, polyurethane does help protect it from water damage or any kind of damage, moisture damage, things like that. I'm thinking of this as more of like a display piece, not something you're going to be throwing outside in the rain. So I opted not to polyurethane mine as well. So mine's just going to be the stain. And then, yeah, because I'm like, all the perks that you get from doing a polyurethane coat, plus it'll also give it a shine finish. I mean, it has like satin gloss finishes. I'm not sure if they do a matte finish. And I was like, I really don't want it to be shiny because then it takes away from the effect that I actually want, which is a rustic look. And then for these small pieces, they were so hard to stain with the grain. But I actually did a little bit extra of a coat because it seemed like the stain wasn't soaking into it as well as it did the other pieces, which is why you'll see me do an extra coat on them. But we'll see how they look as well, and everything looks after an hour. But yeah, enjoy watching me finish stain everything. And again, this is the end of part 2 after the staining's done. I hope you've been enjoying watching me work on all of these little pieces and things. If you have questions, depending on how much people like this, I've been contemplating actually making a small run of them to sell. So if that's something you'd be interested in as well, let me know, and then I can definitely look into that kind of stuff. I mean, I've written down everything for process-wise and things like that. And yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed it and enjoy watching me finish staining everything.